It's a 4-course meal.
All right. So one of the things I've been observing, and I think it's relative to this business right now, on my bathroom wall hangs on a poster board a highly faded sticky note. And on that sticky note, it says these things. I just want to, and look, these were, does anybody have any like PTSD from remembering, like, I think we were talking about some of the 2008s and 9s and 10s at all. I mean, there's a little bit of people, like there's a little bit of a vibe, like when people saw us make some of the changes. I know that Justin Udy said, this makes me feel like this is all happening all over again. Like, and I'm like, well, I go, I guess you could appreciate, you could come from, I go, although it's a totally different, but with all these the different changes of just life, the market, the business, I just thought it was actually interesting. But I remember distinctly that on this little sticky note, I wrote this down, and it really became my mantra as I moved through. And here's the thing, I've said these things when the market has been really white hot. And so people will say, I'll say this, and they'll be like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. But now I think it really matters. And and you'll see why. So just number one, write this down, trust yourself. And that's what it says on my little dryer, or my little sticky note on this little poster board in my bathroom that was written, by the way, probably back about 2009 or 10, somewhere in there. Now, the one thing I realized is that I had to start trusting myself. But there was times in my life where I came all the way over to where I'd only trust myself. And then the next thing it says on my little dry erase board, it says trust God. And I'm okay with whatever you want to put in there. The universe, source, the divine, God, whatever, but something bigger than you. And that's, you want to put trust redwood trees, but something bigger than you, okay? But something bigger than you, all right? But my point is I have found that if I can trust myself, and people say, well, wait, shouldn't you trust God first? I've just found in my own life, I'm just speaking from my own deal, that I have found that if I can start with myself, well, then I'm open to bringing other people into my world and into my life. And one of those individuals, of course, for me is God, right? So the next thing I wrote down on that is that I have down trust the process. Now, the thing that I have to remind myself is that there's a process. And there's lots of people who don't want this process to be this process. And what I mean by that is you may not have to prospect or have to show up at morning meetings. And so part of me is I realize there's a part of this plug and play. There's part of that. The other part of the plug and play, like if I plug in and I play the game here, it's going to work out for me because of this, by the way. And this is what got me into the business of real estate. I was mowing lawns and I looked over and a brand new Lexus LS400 showed up in the driveway of the lawn that of the driveway of the home and the lawn that I was mowing. And out of that car came a gentleman by the name, some of you may know him, Austin Haywood, and his wife. And I looked over at his car and I was looking this direction and I looked out that direction with my 1978 rusted out Dodge Ram Charger. And I said to myself, I wonder what he does. Well, I found out that he sold real estate. As I got to know him, this is what became my mantra. If he, or let's just put even they, if they can, I can. Meaning, what I realized is that if he's doing it, well, then I can do this. And the problem is that when we get into moments like this, in markets like this, we start looking at the 80% of the people, by the way, who are essentially failing. And we will look at their proof that it's not going to work. And yet, the top 20% sell 80% of the property. That's the same thing even in our company. I could pull the stats, and Brendan Lee, we were looking at stats yesterday. And I can show you that the top 20% sell 80% of the properties in this company. It's the 80-20 rule. There's lots of 80-20 rules, but it's a really important point that if I know that I can do it, or if they can do it, I can do it. And that shaped my whole entire career from the very, very beginning. It changed the entire way I looked at this business because I knew that there were others who were succeeding. For me at the time, by the way, I had the opportunity to work next and closely, and so did John, closely to Joan Pate. And Joan Pate was legendary. She was selling a home a day. And I would watch her prospect. And I would be there late at night. And guess who else was there late at night? Joan was there late at night. And you say, well, I don't want to work late. Well, that's okay. You don't have to if you don't want to be Joan. But if you wanted to sell a home a day, you probably work a few late nights. And she was selling 365 homes a year. She had the idea of a team before even people even knew what the word probably even was. She had people making calls for her. She had her 2 assistants. She had buyer's agents. She had this idea of working what we see like some revolution today. She was doing it 30 years ago when everyone thought it was crazy what she was doing. So my point to you is, again, if they can do it, so can I. And one of the things I always remember of the late Dave Stocco is on a little dry erase board about this size. It was about that big. It was a little dry erase board in his office. And on it, it said this. I didn't like that part right from the beginning, just kidding. But it said BYU. And what it was proof to him that he could trust himself because he had graduated with a finance degree from BYU. Then the next thing said this. 50 plus. Well, he had sold 50 homes in a given year, so he knew he could do it. And then the next thing was a goal, but it was a reminder to him that he could trust himself because, look, I've graduated from BYU. I've sold 50 plus homes. And again, this seems crazy, but this was this is a long time ago, and he had down there 250. Because what he wanted to do was make $250,000, which seemed like an astronomical amount of money back in 2009. It would have been 2009-10. So just as a reminder, he put this up here to prove to himself that he could trust himself. And trusting God, trusting this universe, just look around you. And the thing that I have written down in my own journals often is just as a reminder, life is happening for me, right? Not to me. I'm not being punished. There's nothing you've done wrong because the market shifted. But if you aren't willing to declare that you can trust yourself, you can trust your creator, knowing that life is happening for you, knowing another thing I write down often, I wrote down even today, the universe has my back. If you haven't read a great book by Gabrielle Bernstein called The Universe Has Your Back, it is a great read. Great read. Okay. And it's a short, easy read, by the way. Gabrielle Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. Trust the process. Now, how about this? Trust the journey is what I have on there. We say trust the journey. Yeah, trust the process that you're doing. Plug and play, but trust the journey you're on. Sometimes we get so distrustful of the path that we're on that we never fully commit to it. And so it's really important that you take a step back and go, okay, hold on a second here. I got to trust the process. I got to trust the journey. I got to trust God. I got to trust myself. Man, that's a lot of trust. Yeah. But here's the bigger question, right? If I'm going to trust myself, trust God, trust the process, trust the journey I'm on. Well, what about this? Next is go to work is what I have on this little sticky note with probably 3 exclamation marks or more after it. But here's the thing, why the going to work is important. It is this action. See, it's one thing to say, oh, I trust God. It'll all work out. And then you sit over there going, oh my gosh, is it going to happen? I'm so stressed. I mean, what's going to happen with the market? I mean, I'm so nervous. I'm so scared. Really? Is that trust? Is that trust? You say you trust the process, right? You trust the path you're on, but you're always thinking, I should be doing something different. Well, I trust the process. Well, I don't know if I can prospect today. I'm really tired. I don't want to come to the morning meeting today. And so you're always challenging and arguing within yourself, resisting the process, the journey. You're resisting God in your life. You're questioning yourself constantly. So are you trusting? Well, the thing I've realized is that action is what declares. Action is what declares to everyone and yourself, this universe we all live in, to your associates, to you work with, to the world in which you live in, to yourself, that action. So when you go out and take action, meaning you go to work, well, then what it does is it declares like, hey, I trust this. I trust my process. I trust the journey I'm on. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust myself. I'm going to work because I trust it's going to work out. But what do most people do? I don't know. And they play small, and they reduce their light, and they play like they're scared and they're fearful because they say they trust, but they don't act like they trust. And so the easiest way to show your trust in anything is to go take action, to go do something, to go knock on a door, to realize it's all going to be okay. But if you don't change any of your behavior and the actions that you take, well, then what? Then it shows that you're scared, and you're going to get a lot more that wraps and weaves around your fear, your anxiety, your doubts, and your depression and your discouragement. That's what will happen. But if you just go to work, it's interesting what just might happen. Just trust. I'll close with this story. I remember this is the last 3 months. I almost always, even when I leave my house for the airport, knowing that I get to the airport with usually minutes to spare as a general statement, because I can't stand, I mean, but just I want to point this out. I went on a plane 121 times last year. Do you know how many times I missed it? Not once. Not once.
Congrats. That's
One time the
amazing.
plane left early, but.
But I didn't miss it. Which one did I miss?
Hey, you're ready.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't last year. No, in all my flying, like, I mean, I am a million, I am just shy of 1,000,000 miles in the air. I'm just shy. Right? Hold on. And this is what's so silly, and this is why I learned this lesson, by the way. Do you know that if you don't check in on your airplane, check in 30 minutes before,
Yeah.
you cannot get on the plane. So I am there. He goes through security. I'm just talking on my phone in St. George, and I'm sitting there, and I didn't realize I hadn't checked in, and I walk in, and they're like, there's nothing, you can't get in. You haven't checked in. I begged and pleaded, and of course I did not win that game. So anyway, but that was years ago. That was years ago. Okay, so but this year, so I'm thinking I'm going to miss, but this is the reason. I usually leave an hour and 15 minutes before my flight from my house over here in Holiday, and I will leave, and I usually always, Ashlyn, put the airport in my ways to ensure that there wasn't some accident. I didn't really, this time, because sometimes I'll either take I-15, or I'll drive down to 215, depending on what's going on, or I'll drive out down 7th East, just depending on the traffic. I didn't do that today. It was that day. It was in the middle of the afternoon. It was like 2:33 in the afternoon, and I get onto I-15 on 4500 South, and it is dead locked. It is like bumper to bumper. And I started to call, and it kept getting worse and worse. So then I call Delta, and I ask, is there another flight? And they say no. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this flight, sure. And so, and by the way, has anyone gone to the airport, and you know, when you're in B gate, you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm in B gate, 15-20 minute walk, depending on how speedy you are, right? And so I'm thinking there's no way, but I say, you know what? I'm going to trust that this is going to work out. I put my phone down. My mom is in the car. She's like, what are you doing? I said, you know what? I'm making this flight. She's like, how are you going to make this flight? She goes, there's no way you can make the flight. I'm going to make the flight. And I'm like, I'm going to trust the process, the journey. God has my back. Life's happening for me. I'm going to trust myself, Aubrey. And I get up to finally get to the airport 20 minutes before my flight. So there's only 5 minutes. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going until I figure out that it's not possible. I'm going to keep going. And one of the things I've watched in agents is that they somehow talk themselves out of what they think is possible. They start pre-qualifying people before they should be pre-qualified. They start doing things in their presentations they shouldn't do because they believe what people's decision. They start anticipating all the errors, the mistakes, the problems, what's going to happen. You say, well, isn't anticipation good? Yes, but not if it's going to prevent you from moving forward. So what happens if you don't exhaust the possibility of what's possible? So that day, when I get in, I go through security very quickly. I walk, and there's two guys standing at the gate. I am 8 minutes now. I got there in 12 minutes, by the way. I was moving fast. And I got there 8 minutes before the flight has its official departure. And I'm walking up, of course, probably sweating a little bit, a little hot. It was in summer. And they go, "Are you George Morris?" And I'm all, "That is me." And I said, "You are one lucky man." And I said, "Really?" They said, "We literally saw you walking like down the, and we thought that might be you, and we held off closing the door." And I got on the flight. Of course, I called Jennifer, and she's like, "Of course, of course." John always makes fun of me. He goes, "You know that, like in the Pirates of the Caribbean, where Johnny Depp is coming off of his boat, and it's sinking, and he walks right onto the deck." That's me with flights. I am always even I scare people because I don't like getting on the plane until the very last minute. So I'll be sitting out there and people are in panic on the plane, wondering if I'm going to make it, and who are like, friends or coworkers. And I'm always just out there doing my thing. And then I walk onto the plane like seconds before they close the door. So anyway,
it works.
Although we did learn in Peru that it's, for another airline, it's 30 minutes before their flight, not 15 minutes before their flight. That was we almost missed our flight, didn't we? That would have been a bummer, which was one of the most miserable flights I've ever had in the history of my life, packed into one of the worst seats for a guy like the size of me. So that's a whole other story of why you fly first class. Okay, any thoughts to that?
George, when you talked about the trust the journey, it reminded me of, I think it was Wayne Dyer who said it. He said that the obstacles are the way. And so many of us look at the obstacles, the things, the resistance, the disappointments, what we consider failures, that it's failure. It's not. Any obstacle, what stands in our way is the way to what it is that we want. And if you don't resist that, if you're open to it, then the pathway kind of presents itself.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important because everybody looks for reasons for why it's not going to work. It's because of all these things. No, that's all those things are the things that you do overcome in order to get to what it is you want. So it's about a mindset, changing your mindset.
It is.
And the airport story is exactly that. You look at that and say, well, it's not possible. I mean, most people say, I can't do it. I guess I'll just have to change my flight. I won't go, whatever it is. And you said, no, I understand. I'm just going to continue to go forward.
I'm going to continue forward until I really believe that there's absolutely
until the plane is
possible.
taken off.
Yeah, I'm going to keep going.
He'll be hanging on to the wheel.
That's right. Good.
Short thing. I think trust is another word for belief. And I just really appreciate Century 21 because there was times I didn't trust or believe in myself. And I always had other people that I could rely on. And so if you can, as a new agent or even a seasoned agent, when times get tough and you can't believe in yourself, other people believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Hold on to that.
Yes.
And that's what has saved me so many times.
John and George.
When you start doubting, you have to go, well, wait, there's other people that believe in me more than I believe in myself. Let me hang on to that for just a minute.
Yep.
And it works. Yeah.
It happened for me with Robert Fillmore, Brenda Lee, way back 20 something years ago, where I didn't believe myself. And he kept repeating, I believe in you. My eyes filled up with tears. And it changed the whole course of my life because he just simply said, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Amy?
And I was just thinking when you were talking about this 80% that you talked about that's not successful, that is a very welcoming and loving group. And they want you to be a part of it. Isn't it?
It's so true.
You know,
Come on over and hold your meeting.
Let's not learn that if you want to be successful, you have to be different, which means when your friends are, gathering around, they're talking for an hour and should be working, you have to be different than the majority of the people.
Well, it reminds me of the statement of the late John Huntsman Sr., who said, I found out who my true friends were when I was successful, not when I was down and out, not when I was on the verge of losing everything. It was when I was successful that I found my best friends. And I've always thought that that's very profound, because there's people in our lives that they say, okay, well, I want you to be successful, Patricia, but only to this amount. But if you break free, if you go beyond, Adam, like you're supposed to only be here. This guy from, Vernal and Roosevelt, where'd you grow up? Right over there, right? You can only be this successful. You break out of that, they're like, whoa, hold on. Adam was supposed to only be here. Now he's here. And what is interesting, you find who are your true friends when you're successful, not when you're unsuccessful. Because there's a lot of people that want to gather and go, it's all going to be okay. We're all going to suffer through this together. So miserable. I know I'm miserable. You miserable. Okay, good. We're in the right group. We're all miserable. Right? I mean, just think about that. I just want to close with two things. Write these down. Just right now. Commitment. Just ask yourself if you're committed. It's quick. It'll take 30 seconds. I want you to have your pen. Am I committed? Am I committed? Number one, how you show that is your discipline. It is your activity. But number two, to John's point, it is your creativity. You find a way. One of the things I appreciate Bob back here, if you guys don't know this, not only is he an LO, but he's also an underwriter. His whole job is to find a legal and moral and ethical way, by the way, to do a loan. When you think about that, right? You find a way. So number one, discipline. Number two, your creativity. And when you are committed, you find a way, right? The roadblocks are the way. Either around them, under them, over them, or breaking through them. You find a way. You find a way. So remember, creativity and high levels of discipline show and establish your commitment. Activity shows your trust or belief. I can go with that. And this is what I realized as I realized, like, wait a second, you don't have anything to fear, but you got to go to work. And you got to show your action that shows your trust in the universe, in yourself, in the process, and in the journey you're on, so that if you do that, you can have it all. But if you sit there constantly doubting and uncommitted, man, it's going to be a really big battle. You're just going to sit there and hope and pray for a new market, a better market, a market that comes your way. And you got to make sure that you take charge of your life. And you take charge of it by the actions and the disciplines that you take. All right, here we go. Let's rock and roll, guys. Have a great day. Good job. Finish strong.